whereas extravagance and wanting plenty is the way of the atmosphere Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhus which I have described above, and they will never be able to get free from dukkha while their hearts are firmly attached to those things. Eliminating anxiety and worry for those things of various kinds which we are associated with is for the purpose of weakening the emotional attachments arammana for them, which are kilesas, each of its own kind. Anyone who has not yet seen the value of Dhamma in the form of contentment and wanting little, and other such things, has still not seen the value of Dhamma enough to want to scramble up with determination, patience, and forbearance. Instead, he will be anxious about his mouth and stomach, afraid of having to put up with difficulties, and afraid that these things will lead to his death. Finally, he will end up inundated with concern about his mouth and stomach, which have always been causing him anxiety. If in doing the practice of Dhamma we are not prepared to let go of our emotional attachments, our arammana to these things, there is no way for us to get free from all the kilesas, because all these things which we have been talking about are the means by which the kilesas tie us up. You should realize that concern for such things is what inundates those who practice the way by means of attachment and longing, until they reach a point where they cannot get themselves out of it. Or else they may not realize that the kilesas are strong enough within them so that they should be concerned about getting rid of them, enough to make them go out to a suitable place to enable them to get rid of some of these kilesas which are bearing down on their hearts. But instead they become possessive of those kilesas, afraid that if they vanish from their hearts it will leave nothing to bring them any fun, nothing to scratch. They are therefore bound to remain involved in a mess with these things. Thinking and speaking of these things makes me feel very sorry and disheartened at the manner in which we who practice the way do not see freedom from dukkha, which is Dhamma, as being more valuable than the kilesas which have always been tormenting our hearts. For we think anxiously about our mouths and stomachs as being more important than letting go for the sake of freedom. But those who delight in Dhamma and see how resolute and courageous the Acharya is in his practice feel ever more inclined to strive with determination in their own practice. This is as it should be for those who have come to learn and train for the purpose of Dhamma and its meaning, and for truly getting free from and dispersing the kilesas and the load of dukkha from their hearts. Such a bhikkhu may think, he, the Acharya, is a person, I am a person. He has a heart, so have I. He can put up with these difficulties, so can I. He has reached a high state, I shall endeavor to reach it also, without retreating and giving way to let the kilesas laugh and mock at me. He has attained freedom, I shall also go on trying to gain freedom by following him, until I do so, for his kilesas were just in his heart in the same way as mine are, and they are not a heap which is piling up and increasing before and behind me like a mountain or a jungle. I am quite certain that someone who has strong interest and intention to follow the training and do the practice for himself and for true Dhamma in the foregoing manner is bound to be able to attain freedom one day, sooner or later, for sure. The way I act in regard to my requisites and other things of various sorts, such as patching and darning, or adapting things to make use of them and repairing things as necessary, is because I have seen the value of having these mental attitudes, these Dhamma, as habitual characteristics, and because I am anxious for my friends in Dhamma and followers that they may otherwise not have any way of practice left in the future. For in this age the tendency is to practice Kammaṭṭhāna in lazy, easy, self-indulgent ways. They tend to do everything in such a manner that once the food is cooked they immediately eat the lot and spoil everything. In other words, as soon as the food is about cooked, it is all eaten up by their mouths, stomachs, and the fire altogether, without leaving anything over for tomorrow. The meaning here is that as soon as they leave the meditation practice, there is no Dhamma value left, such as calm and peace. It is all blown away completely by emotional attachments, arammana. I believe quite firmly that those things which I do are in accordance with the noble Arya actions and noble customs which they have always practiced, because they are actions which are done with an awareness of danger, without forgetting oneself. They are not done in the manner of the monkeys who eat something, then throw it away and look around for something new, with no thought for that which they had before, as to whether there is still some of it left which is good to eat as food. People who are rather mad in their excitement with the latest fads, fashions, and fancies are like this. How can they ever have any basic principles in their hearts to give them guidance to look after their possessions and wealth? Their shirts, trousers, and other clothing they wear once or twice and then throw them away, saying, "These are too old to wear, they are out of date and not in fashion now," after which they go looking for new ones, as if money flowed into their pockets of itself like the water in the ocean. They never think how even though they get the most expensive and special things to wear to decorate and display themselves, they still remain a person, the same person as the one who is presently so full of vanity. From where will they get anything of supreme and undying sara value? As for putting on those decorative clothes, what matters is that they remain the same person as they were before. Their characters, whether good or bad, remain virtually unchanged, unless, that is, they change themselves with those practices which bring them virtue and value by doing them, because the virtue and value in people is dependent only on their knowledge, skill, and behavior, and there is nothing at all in their dress and decoration to delude and hypnotize them so that they forget themselves in their excitement, unless, that is, they do it to deceive other people whose sight is dim and deluded, like rabbits that are frightened by a loud noise and run away until their legs almost break. But I cannot see that there is anything praiseworthy in it, so that one may say, their virtue and value has increased at all by wearing those expensive clothes and opulent things which they keep changing several times a day. What in fact such people inescapably get from doing this sort of thing is damage to their own character, bad habits, as well as a leaking heart, a heart without principles or basis, and they can never be themselves as they truly are with a good set of guiding principles. This leads them to create their own destruction, as well as that of their society and future generations who pick up the same deluded ways, perpetuating them into the future. This is the evil result which is sure to come from doing such things, but those who act in this way are bound to see it for themselves. There is no need to have a committee to judge and to decide to make it difficult for them, as they do when there is a conflict of interests, for they will know what things are evil and what are good. They will also know the meaning of dukkha and sukha, and all this they will know in themselves, and there is no need for anyone to tell them. This is like the practice of Dhamma, for those who have already done the practice and gained satisfactory results from it, and teach and point out the right way for those who follow. But if their followers look for trouble, saying that the way is difficult, too old-fashioned and out of date, and they have no confidence in following their teacher, nor in doing the practice with full commitment of heart, then the way is blocked, like a dead person who knows no good or evil, no happiness or sorrow at all. In the next stage, when such people become teachers, their pupils will behave like monkeys without any restraint or rules of behavior to give them some discipline. Whatever they want to do, they will be free to do and to follow the ways of animals, which know no language. But we are people and bhikkhus, and we cannot stay in the same world if they act like this, so they will have to be driven out to live in a charnel ground with the dead, or to live in the jungles with the monkeys and apes. But they are not likely to consent to this, because they consider that they are people who are still alive and not yet dead, that they are human and not monkeys, and so cannot live in such places. In the end, they become people who are always contentious and discordant, both in the world and Dhamma, and they make themselves objectionable and disliked by society, as well as causing a lot of concern and trouble. The manner of practicing Dhamma, in which they do a bit here and a bit there without ever getting down to it properly, is what obstructs and hinders the field of practice. Then they become Kammaṭṭhāna parasites in the field of practice, hidden amongst the others who are their companions and who are fully committed and determined to do the practice properly. These parasites do not want to get away from the others to let them get free from the dirty, stinking mud, because there are people who come to visit them, wanting to ask and learn about Dhamma, and these parasites can then talk to them, boastfully claiming that they are Tūtanga Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhus in the line of Venerable Ajaan Mun and Venerable Ajaan Sao. Then they trade on the names of their teacher and the acharyas, making use of them continually. They stink worse than rotting fish in the market. In saying this, I am not blaming you, nor saying what kind of Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhu you are, but I must point out any cases of moral teaching which are appropriate to my companions and those who have accepted me as their acharya, so that they may know the way to avoid and evade such issues and how to choose ways of action which are entirely good and appropriate. The result will then be for all of you to some extent. I am getting very old now, and I am concerned as to how my followers in Dhamma will keep up the tradition of doing things in the way that I have taught them. As for that question which you asked me, there was nothing wrong with it so far as the relationship of teacher and pupil is concerned, because our welfare is interrelated, and when one sees one's teacher do things which one is afraid may make difficulty for him, out of respect, affection, and complete trust in him in all things, one wants to make it more easy and convenient for him. So one talks about it with him with the intention and hope that it will bring benefit to him. Therefore I don't look on it as being wrong in any way that you asked me to do those things, but in order to uphold the Aryan tradition, so that it may remain harmonious, undisturbed, and fully satisfying in the future, both for ourselves and for those who follow us in future generations, so that they may take up what we do as a basis to be followed in practice, I respectfully ask my companions in Dhamma to commit yourselves to the practices of being provident, being economical, being contented and satisfied with little, and doing it with sincerity in regard to all your requisites, to maintain the tradition and to be someone who goes the way of practice smoothly and consistently. Then all the kilesas and their tricks will not create unreasonable amounts of trouble for you, because you will have the Dhutanga practices to counter them and weaken them constantly. These 4 articles of Dhamma are very important in the field of practice, and I ask you to please realize this in your hearts. As long as someone has these 4 Dhammas in his heart, he will be calm and at peace, both in his heart and in his outward activities, and no stain or blemish will become attached to him while this is so. Then wherever he goes or stays, he will be happy, his body, speech, and heart being calm and peaceful, and no danger to anyone. The external activities and behavior of a bhikkhu who has these Dhammas in his heart is pleasant to see, inducing peace in the hearts of his companions and other people of all classes, as well as the Devatas, Indra, Brahmas, the Nagas, and Garudas, and all the rest. So all of you should please take good note of these things in your hearts and endeavor to practice them so that you will gain the results of them. But you must never weaken or give up these Dhammas which are at the heart of all the Venerable Arya Bhikkhus, for they cherish them and constantly uphold them in their lives and hearts. As for other ordinary people, they may have different ideas and understandings. Therefore, in order to be exactly right and certain, you must take hold of the saying, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami, I take refuge in the Sangha, and make it firm and strong in your hearts, for those 4 Dhammas and the Sangha refuge are of equal value and importance. The question and request of that bhikkhu for Venerable Ajaan to give way and take it more easily turned into a long and fiery Dhamma talk. His way of teaching Dhamma is very difficult for anyone else to equal, for all his skillful ways of fiery criticism and mild moderate talk were all of essential importance to those who were listening intently with open hearts. None of the bhikkhus who were sitting listening to him ever thought or said that Venerable Ajaan spoke in a fiery, angry manner by bringing up the kilesas as an emotional support, an arammana, or even that they were used as the means of producing such talk. In fact, they all spoke in the same way, saying how this talk of Venerable Ajaan today went right to my heart in the most direct way. This is how it ought to be. When he is calm and not roused up, one can never hear a talk like this. Only when someone makes a request of Venerable Ajaan, as in this case, does he seem to give a talk which is to me a joy to hear, with a fine flavor of truth. If anyone has anything to ask the teacher, he should not remain quiet, for he rarely gives such a talk as this, which was so good to hear. After Venerable Ajaan's desana, the bhikkhus gathered in small groups and talked together like this, as they usually did after a talk on Dhamma. In fact, this was quite true, for if nobody said anything or asked any questions which he could use, he would give a normal Dhamma talk, but even though it concerned the higher aspects of Dhamma, it lacked the fire and force of those occasions when he had a question or incident to act as the focus of his talk. I used to like listening to this kind of talk, which went right home to the heart, because my nature was always rather coarse and unsubtle, and if I was not hit hard by it, some of the Dhamma would never reach my heart, and even though it was very high, my heart rarely picked up much in the way of useful teachings as it would in a talk such as the foregoing one. The size of the alms bowl. Amongst the bhikkhus in Thailand, the bowl is considered to be an important requisite which no Buddhist monk should be without. In fact, it is always considered to be an essential requisite from the day of their ordination right to the end of their life in the Sangha. But there are many types of bowls and many sizes as well, within the limitations specified in the Vinaya rules. In particular, amongst those bhikkhus who follow in the line of Venerable Ajaan Mun, it is generally thought that the bowl should be of medium to large size. This comes from the way in which they like to go wandering as ascetics in the forests and mountains as it suits their inclination, for they do not like staying in any one place outside the rainy season, the Vassa. When they go wandering, they walk barefoot and go wherever they feel inclined, and those requisites which are necessary they have to carry along with them, but they do not take much. What they carry generally consists of the bowl, the 3 robes, sankarti, jivara, and sabong, a bathing cloth, an umbrella tent, a clod, a mosquito net, a kettle of water, a water filter, a razor, sandals, some small candles, and a candle lantern which is made of a piece of white cloth, sewn up to form a tube, and 2 circular pieces made of metal, the top one being an open ring. A candle is then mounted on the bottom, and when lit, it gives light for walking jankama at night and for going anywhere round about the place where they are staying. So it acts in place of the more usual types of lantern. When they are wandering about, they keep many of the requisites in the bowl, such as the outer robe, the sankarti, the mosquito net, the razor, the candle lantern, and candles. Therefore, the bowls which the Dhutanga bhikkhus use tend to be much larger than those which are normally used in order to accommodate these requisites, and to carry them along conveniently when they go from place to place. For once they have filled up the bowl, nearly all of their requisites are taken care of, and they can sling it over one shoulder and set off walking, with their umbrella tent and a small handbag on the other shoulder. The bowl is heavy, and for those who are not used to it, it may be very difficult or even more than they can stand. But being a Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhu is rather like being a warrior in a war, who must just put up with whatever conditions he has to face. A fairly big bowl is also more convenient to eat from because all the food is put together in the bowl. The rice, savory, and sweet things are all there in one bowl, and they have no plates, dishes, spoons, or forks. Once they have finished eating, they wash and dry the bowl, making it clean and free from smell. In washing the bowl, it is necessary to do it at least 3 times with fresh water each time. Then, after it has been wiped dry, if the sun is out, it is put out to dry completely for a short while before being put away in a suitable place, depending on circumstances. But if the weather is clear, the bowl may be left with the lid off to get rid of any lingering smell that it may have. The Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhus look after their bowls very carefully. If someone offers to wash and wipe out their bowl, they are reluctant to let them do so if they have never done it before, because they are afraid of the bowl getting rusty, afraid that it may be put down in a place where it is not safe, afraid that it may knock against hard objects, or that it may drop and hit something hard, which may damage or dent it, so that rust will start forming there before long. When this happens and rust forms, the whole bowl has to be rubbed down with abrasive stones and emery paper to remove all the black iron oxide both inside and outside until the metal is clean. Then it must be re-oxidized by heating it in a fire, and the fire must be replenished 5 times to accord with the Vinaya rules, after which it may be used. All this means a lot of trouble and hard work, so the bhikkhus look after their bowls more carefully than any other requisite, and they are reluctant to let other people handle them. When returning from Paṭipadā, people sometimes go and ask the bhikkhus for their bowls, to carry them back for them. But if they feel uncertain about the person who asks, whether he has ever had any experience in looking after a bowl, they will probably refuse politely, giving some reason or excuse for doing so. They will not readily hand their bowl to anyone until they had taught them how and where to put the bowl down, how to wash it clean and wipe it, and how to look after it generally until that person understands. Then he would be allowed to handle the bowl.